John, I'm so happy to have you back on the podcast your second time around because A, I know this is going to be a super valuable conversation for listeners, but B, I just enjoy hanging out with you. So I'll take this opportunity to just learn from you. So thank you for coming back to the pod.
My pleasure, Mike. Thank you for having me so much. I appreciate it.
You've spent the last year birthing a book, writing it, editing it, designing it, doing the whole process of what goes into writing a book. It's called Creative Deviations, how you can infuse your storytelling, fundraising, and direct response with more creativity. And the way I see it, it's basically this field guide that you've created full of examples on how organizations can make their fundraising communications worthy of their donors' attention and time and response. And I've had a chance to read an early copy. John, I'll be buying this book for our teams and our clients. So thank you for writing it. First of all, massive gratitude from my end to have this resource.
Thank you, Mike. That's super nice. I mean, when I started it, the question is, do we need this book? Does the sector need this book? And I tell the story that, I remember sitting on a dock and looking at a book called Asking Properly from George Smith back from 1995 or something, and realizing how much that book influenced my whole career, and thought about all the things I've learned from all the people that have taught me, and realized there's not really been a book like that for a sector for a long time. And like I said, with some support of a couple folks, I thought it was a good idea. Now was the time. If I was ever going to do it, why not do it now? So it was awesome. It was such an interesting experience. I had no idea what I was getting into when I started at all.
Well, the book is full of creative deviations, and let's start there. What is a creative deviation?
Well, the principle is that sometimes, and George used to call it pioneering, sometimes the merest or the most minor pioneering can lead to really interesting things. And so through our whole career, I mean, Jen and I, people have said to us, you guys are so innovative in your work, and which to me, and to lots of us, innovative is actually a bad word in our sector. I'm like, I don't want to be innovative because I'm actually not being innovative. I'm actually just leaning into good direct marketing. I'm leaning into interesting creative that makes people just think for a second and take some action. So we're not doing anything innovative. I'm just leaning on all the basic principles, all the fundamentals of all the things that have to go into individual giving and direct response.
Right. Well, you've got 12 deviations that you've outlined in the book, plus a bonus one. So there's 13. And like all good direct response, there's a bonus, right? We're going to focus on 4 of them today. But I highly recommend the folks listening to this podcast to go out and buy the book. It's worthy of your time and attention. It's one of those books that I really think you should have on your bookshelf if you're working in fundraising and individual giving. So let's start with this deviation, and I want to start here for a reason. And it's a deviation that you've titled Forget About Your Logo. What's this deviation all about?
It's at the risk of, so right off the top, Mike, you want to get all the marketing people fired up, which is totally fine. Yeah. Through my career, I've worked with lots of organizations of every different shape and size and stuff, and there's so much emphasis put on this idea of branding, mostly through the last 15 or 20 years, through the late 90s and stuff. Really, we started to become focused on that less so than good storytelling or actually acknowledging the work of donors. Again, it's an ever-evolving, ever-shifting thing. And so the principle is, at the end of the day, donors usually are not giving to you because of your logo, how it looks, how your materials look. Those are not the things that they are using as motivation to give to your appeals. And we, again, organizationally, we've lost our way now. We've created a place where we left no space in our stories for donors. Our story is so bubble wrapped tight because of our brand and all the things we stand for and blah, 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 that again, donors are isolated. And for some organizations, it's like we don't acknowledge they're even there. We're just sending them something because we're such and such an organization, you should give to it, the end. Well, that's not how this works. And then we go our way to blame it on our donors for not giving, so that they're fatigued or they're tired or whatever. No, again, we're so good at doing all these things and just keeping ourselves, branding, like I said, I think it is like this safety spot. It's like we just want to protect ourselves from being vulnerable and emotional, and therefore being judged. And branding is one way to do that. It makes us look all things professional and positive, and that's just not real life. It doesn't make any sense. Not in our sector, I don't think.
Right. And the subtext to the donor then is, I guess I'm not needed, right? Like, good for you. You seem to have it all together. I guess I'm not needed.
I think it can be. I mean, again, if you talk to some of the big organizations in our country, right, where they're doing okay, they know what they're doing, they're still fundraising, they're making lots of money. I just think that there's room for us to make sure we're leaving a spot at the table for the donors' participation. I think they could be doing even more. Our sector, as you know, Mark Phillips talks about all the time, really hasn't really grown that much in the last generation. It's not really grown that much. We're just doing a little bit better every single year. And I just wonder if we start to change some of these conversations. And this book really focuses on all the things we can be doing, the obsessiveness over this work that I think will really, and it has for the organizations we do work with, has revolutionized the work they're doing and how they go about it, because they are making space for donors to be an active partner in that work. Not at all costs, not to lead all the conversations, but they are partner. They're a piece of the puzzle.
Right. We also place this enormous amount of weight on the visual brand, because we think that is our brand. It's the way the logo looks, or the way the colors are, or whatever, the way our brochures look, how we painted the building, whatever it is. We think that is our brand. Now, surely it contributes to who we are, but it's such a small piece of our brand, right? Because what is your brand at the end of the day? It's kind of like how people think of you.
Exactly, and that's a hard thing to control, which again makes it, again, at the very beginning of the book I talk about, the book is not full of stats, it's not full of data, because again we lean into that as a sector. We lean in like, where is the data, what's the ROI, doing this sort of thing. We're lost the feel of the feelings of what we're doing. Do you know what I mean? Like that kind of like. Real life, Mike, as you know, is about feelings. You and I have conversations. We share our values and emotions with one another. Through our conversations, we either tend to start liking each other more or liking each other less, depending on who we are. But that's how we actually grow with people around us. And organizationally, we just leave all that aside. People are afraid of that stuff. But at the end of the day, it is how donors perceive you. And some charities, I have seen instances where donors are not even reading anything. They're basically getting an envelope, taking out the BRE, putting a check in, and putting it back in the mail. They're not going to read anything because they just know, well, they're a food bank, and I know people around me need food, so that's all I need to know. So that's a strong brand, But again, it's the brand of the food bank, not the Daily Bread Food Bank or such and such. It's just I know what a food bank is, and therefore I know why I want to give to it. So it's how they feel about this thing that exists, and again, not about the visualness or colors.
Yeah. I mean, I just even think back in like our personal relationships. If we had friends who were always really put together, who never asked for help, they all had everything like going on in life. We might go like, it seems like they've got it all figured out. But man, if your best friend moved and they didn't ask you to help, and you find out later, or if your best friend was sick and they didn't let you know, you'd be like, I would have loved to help you out, man. Like, why are you keeping me out of your life?
I share this as well. Ken Burnett said something to me a long time ago, which was, 80% of this work is common sense. And so often, and I say to my clients, if you think about our work as you do with the relationships in your normal life, and transfer a lot of this analogy that we're using here to the work you're doing, we would be way better off. But again, for various reasons, because there's a lot of people in our sector who've come from other sectors, the commercial sector, who just are not, it just doesn't make any sense. There are a lot of people working here that shouldn't be amongst us because they just don't trust it. They don't trust it. But again, like I said at the beginning, I'm not going to spend time trying to convince someone that anything I'm talking about makes sense or not. I know it works because it's worked my whole career. So we just need to get back to actually remember we're talking to these human beings we call donors, and they want to help. At the end of the day, they just want to help us. So why don't we just let them help us? Why don't we get rid of that?
So forget about the logo. It's not about the logo. Got it. So what is it about in terms of if you're a communication sort of coordinator, you're a marketing person, you're helping fundraising because you're sort of on the same team, and you're tasked with, creating these donor communications pieces, and you are overseeing design, or you are the person designing it. So you're saying, okay, it's not about the logo necessarily. It's not about being so polished. It's not necessarily about staying on brand at all times. So give us a bit of a framework for what good design in fundraising is about.
To me, good design is design that works. And so you have to consider what works from the very, very get-go. From the moment that donor walks through their mailbox and sticks their hand in, that's the moment it has to start working. And again, doing a lot of coaching, people send me over the letters. I'm like, well, where's the rest of the piece? Like, where's everything else? Right. And there's no thoughtfulness or consideration given to anything other than the letter. And every little bit of this process matters. And I joke with people, the original first creative deviation was envelopes. Chapter 1 was about envelopes. And I was like, you saw it, it's so nerdy and obsessive, because with envelopes you have to be. There's a lot of things at play, and you've put information on LinkedIn about it. I know you've played with those ideas a lot too. I mean, there are a lot of things that play with an outer envelope, but I have to consider how the outer envelope works in the hands of the donors, all the way through to every piece they hold, to what I want them to look at, to what I want them to do with it. There are all little decisions that have to happen through that whole process, and that takes a level, again, of obsessiveness and nerdiness that I don't know a lot of people have an appetite for, but at least something like this, a book like this, brings all those things together. It kind of reminds you of all these things that do come into play. It's all design, and you have to think of it as it all has to be designed together.
Yeah, the outer envelope, to me at least, is the scariest part, because it doesn't matter how good the rest of the piece is. A client is trusting you with putting 25,000 letters in the mail. There's a lot of pressure on the outer envelope. I mean, it's a lot of pressure on the subject line of the email. That's the outer envelope too. Mm-hmm. So the design for donors is design that works, which means that you think about every piece and how will a donor interact with this piece. And you are talking about every single little piece, from the outer envelope to the tiniest sort of piece on the reply device to what the number 9 BRE looks like, right?
Every single piece has to be considered how it works with the other piece. And at the end of the day, good design is only good design if it's effective. So again, I tell people a lot. There's lots of things I do in the design of the actual graphic design of work that I don't really care for, don't really like. A lot of people I've told colleagues tell me it's ugly or it's too simple. And there's a lack of, I don't know what it is. It's like this fear that something doesn't look as good as it's supposed to. And again, this is adopted from the commercial sector. Everything in our world, as we all know, every person listening to this podcast, everything around us is perfect all the time. Yeah. Everything looks beautiful. Everything is centered perfectly. We're surrounded by perfection. So I go out of my way to make things imperfect, because that actually works now. And people are not comfortable with this, because that's the whole point. If you still have to stand out, you still have to get someone's attention, stuff like that. So if you go to your way to make things look ugly, for lack of a better word, that's really effective. That's effective design, because it'll raise you a lot of money. I don't care if you don't like it. It's like branding and marketing comm teams. Like, God, I've been arrested by the branding police so many times through my career because I did something that was outside of their bylaws. But I'm like, I'm not here for that. Yeah. I'm not interested in this discussion, because what I do has to make money. What you have to do just has to look nice. And why are you having any say at all in the work that I think you've just lost probably half of your podcast listeners just by me talking about this. But you feel me? Like, it's like I don't know where our priorities are sometimes. It just really boggles my mind. But I have to check my own subjectivity in a lot of my work, because there's no room for it. Doesn't matter what I think.
I wonder if part of that is just thinking, is almost like a personal fear of failure. Like, if this doesn't look good, that will reflect badly on me. Because I don't want my other designer friends to see this and be like, this is what you're working on. Or if we just if we hide behind it, like you said, because we feel like if it's not polished and professional, then surely we won't be perceived as being polished and professional.
Whatever that means.
Yeah.
Certainly, I've been judged a lot as a designer by designer friends for this work and stuff. But I'm like, you know what? It takes a remarkable amount of work to be this good, to make things look this bad. And it's not bad because it raises tons of money. So what the fuck? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not bad to me, because if we're designers or we're marketers or whatever we're doing, or advertisers, the day is to probably make money for some reason. And if that's the goalpost, then what does it matter what the product is that allows you to do that? You know?
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's, again, I just think we've kind of gone a bit bass backwards in this sector on lots of kinds of things. And this one really just obviously, I mean, I've been doing it for 25 years, so it does obviously get me, but it just drives me crazy, some of the decision making that happens, and I don't understand why.
Yeah. All right, so that's the first deviation that we're going to get into. The second one we're going to get into is storytelling is dead. Storytelling is dead. Why is storytelling dead, or what do you mean by this?
So every single conference you go to, everything you listen to tells you it's all about the story. You need a great story. We can't do this without having a story. Find the story. Here's how you find stories. And Jen hates me. My business partner, hates me for this. But at the end of the day, a story only is a small part of what makes up for a successful appeal. Indirect marketing, the most important element, success or failure of your piece, is your list. Nothing to do with the story. That's just the freaking people you're talking to. And if you get that wrong, 50% of the success or failure relies on that. Second, most important thing is the offer. What are you asking me for, and why should I care about this right now? Those two elements make up 70, 80% of the success or failure of a piece. You don't need stories. You need to have something to ask your donors for, and hopefully, if you've done a good job, they'll care that you're asking for it.
Yeah.
So,
and the story serves the offer, right?
Yeah, it definitely shows you how it shows the offer and why you're asking for this. It shows the importance of it. But again, good appeals don't even need a story. I mean, certainly through the years, done lots of appeals that have no story at all, because it's so clearly articulated what the need was and why it was important. You don't always need a story to do that. So again, a classic, I love this example, classic direct response offer is, give us $7 now or the dog gets it. And the reason why that's a classic direct response offer is because it's clear what the problem is, which is the dog's going to get it. It's clear on what we need you to do, which is give us $7 now. It has that urgency. So it has all the elements of a very good offer. But again, I see lots of appeals that have no offer, don't ask for anything. And people don't realize, well, it's not raising any money. You didn't actually ask for anything. You told a great story, but I don't know what does you want from me. So every appeal, everything you do, every time you reach out to donors for any help, you need to have a good offer, and you need how to craft a good offer, and that takes a little bit of work. So I ask people, think about what is your dog. Every organization has a dog. What is your dog, and how much money do I have to give to make sure I save that dog? You need to answer that question in every single appeal.
Yeah. One of the famous sort of appeals in our sector is make a blind man see 10 pounds, which is hanging up in my office. But the most successful appeal we ever ran did not have a story. Now, it followed sort of a story format in that there's a problem, there's consequences of that problem not being solved, the stakes are high. There is a solution, but it needs to, the donor needs to help with that solution. There is a desired future state, what this could look like, but the story is completely unresolved. So it follows a story format, and I was just a bit of a side note. I was just rereading Aristotle's Poetics, and it just struck me how none of that has changed in hundreds of years. It's all just the same, right? It's like a character wants something, but there's like a giant problem they have to overcome, and they either get some help in overcoming it, and it's a comedy, or they don't, and they die, and it's a tragedy. And that's sort of the essence of it. And we get to help donors solve problems, which I think is a very noble and privileged position to be in. We actually get to help our donors solve problems in the world that they care about. So why would we get in the way of that?
Yeah, well, again, that's a very big topic that astounds me to no end. I don't think you talk about reply forms, or we're not going to talk about reply forms, but they're a good case in point of us getting in the way all over the place of letting our donors help us fix problems. And I don't understand why. I don't understand why people don't understand that that's what you're doing when you have 1,000 checkboxes on your reply forms.
Right. So I'm being a little facetious here, but if I'm hearing it correctly, if you just tell a good story, that doesn't mean you're going to raise a lot of money.
I think that's relatively safe, because even if you and I sat down for a coffee and I told you a really amazing story, and I need your help, but I just never said, by the way, this is why I'm telling you this story, then guess what? You're not going to do me like, that was a great coffee, and off you go. Yep. So that's what awareness campaigns do. It's like they kind of tell a story, but don't get around to asking you for anything. And that's why people are like, wow, the awareness campaign didn't raise the same money. Wow, I don't know why. You got donors aware, maybe, but no, you didn't ask them to do anything. So guess what? They didn't do anything.
Yeah.
You know.
Deviation number 3 that we're going to talk about is more is more. Get into this a little bit. This means what it means. It's more is more. Like include more stuff in your fundraising appeals. But let's talk about this a little bit. What is the more stuff, and what is the right kind of more stuff?
The right kind of more stuff is so a couple things. First of all, people think less is more, especially as it comes to a direct response. Looking through my mother-in-law's mail for 20 years has taught me that everyone thinks a perfect direct mail piece is a number 10 envelope, an 8.5 by 11.5 by 14 letter reply form, and a BRE. And I'm telling you that it's not. That's less. But the more you put into the pack, the better it's going to perform. The more money you'll raise. Again, I don't believe you. If you don't believe me, that's fine. I know it to be true because I test these things. We try these things. We look at people like Mark Phillips or Sean Triner's tried these things over and over again. But what the right more thing is anything that adds to the case of what you're asking for. It's back to coming back to the offer. If you can add another piece that tells another bit of the story that maybe uses a different part of my brain as a human, it makes me feel more like I understand the issue in a totally different way. So we'll do different pieces that are a little more visual in their delivery. Maybe it's only a visual, maybe has lots of stats on it. So again, all these things add to the overall case. Do you want to do a mailing with 12 inserts to every single one of your donors? No, that's cost prohibitive. But again, the sector really talks about strategically how do you use this information and the truth of this to do better, more effective. Whenever I say better, I mean more effective. Raises you more money, fundraising. And adding more pieces into your appeal pretty much always makes you raise more money.
Let's talk a little bit more about what some of those additional pieces might be. So what kind of lift notes, what kind of involvement devices, what kind of stuff can we include? What is some common stuff where we can start, somebody's listening to this, they're like, okay, that makes sense, like include stuff that's more visual. But what do you mean? Maps, charts, graphs, pictures? What are we talking about?
Keep going, Mike. Everything so far you mentioned, anything you could think of, I've done everything. I've done bumper stickers, postcards, bookmarks, ornaments, photographs, newspaper articles, buttons, stickers, like you name it. Everything counts. If it's thought of and utilized creatively, this is where you really can get your creative on in terms of adding things into the pack. There's no definitive list. There's nowhere in this book do I give you a checklist of things that if you do, you will be off to the races, because it's just not like that. This is a craft. This is a chance to be creative. And so, yes, I know people like Jen Love and Sean Triner absolutely love maps. Always constantly trying to think, how can we add? You can add a map to any appeal you ever do.
Yep.
If you can't figure that out, that just means you're not creative enough. So, and that's true of a lot of things. You can always add a photograph to a mailing. Again, if you can't think of a photograph, then you're not being creative enough. So, again, these things can make a difference. The cool thing also is you can test them, you can try them. But I'm telling you, if it's appropriate to add a photograph of the mission in action, a child at camp who's bursting a bubble and laughing with their friend, that has a lot more impact on me as a donor than your 4-page letter.
Yeah.
Well, that might be the perfect insert or extra piece for your appeal. So it really just depends on what is you're asking for in the appeal, and what else can I add that will help move my donor, help them make that decision. And sometimes the thing you come up with could be even more effective than the letter that we put so much emphasis on, because most letters are not very good. They're written by people who are very robotic, don't know how to write good appeal letters, and again, sometimes has little to do with donors making the decision to give or not, and it's just a basic truth of our work. Sorry.
Yeah. I'll tell you a bit of I wouldn't call it a failure, but we worked with a charity that worked with adults with disabilities, and as part of their crafts group, we had to make Christmas ornaments out of clay, and then we included them in the holiday mailing. Now these are kind of thickish sort of clay ornaments, and about half of them just ripped the envelopes open, and donors got like a ripped open envelope, and the ornament was somewhere in Canada Post in their sorting facility. And Canada Post called the printer and they said, "Listen, these guys, you got to tell them never to do this again, because it caused a bit of a situation."
Yeah, great idea in theory.
Yeah. All right, so more is more. So the last deviation that we're going to talk about is it's all the small things. Help us understand this a little bit.
It's like real life. People are like, what's the thing I can fix here to make this better? Or what was the thing that happened that made this all go wrong? It's just like relationships. It's never a big thing that allows you to fix everything or blows it all up. It's a whole bunch of little things that on their own are dismissed. They don't even look like. I was reading a story the other day about relationships, and this couple had broken up. Their marriage had broken up. And one of the things he talked about was how he'd leave a cup beside the sink after he was done drinking out of it. The dishwasher was right there. And his wife has said, this is shitty. You leave your cup there and you could just put it in the dishwasher. And he's like, what's the big deal? I could use it again or something like that. And he really pinpointed that was a really key essential thing that led to the breakup of his marriage, because it was important to her. So I don't get too far away from the question, but in our work, we have those cups. We have these things that do have impact on the success or failure of our piece. So I'm clear there's no magic bullets in our work. If you're looking for if you have a consultant or an agency or anyone telling you that you do this one thing, it's going to change everything, they're lying to you. It's wrong, because it's about all the little things we need to do all the time and think about that actually add up to something quite remarkable, especially as it relates to unique experiences for donors. So I talk paper clips is a classic one. I talk about using paper clips. I know you have too, in mailings. It seems like a small thing to dismiss, but what's the power of a paper clip? I don't understand. Well, when you put a paper clip on things, first of all, computers don't use paper clips. They don't like paper clips because it messes everything up. They don't have the dexterity to use paper clips. So when you use a paper clip, first and foremost, it suggests that a human being put it together. Again, small things, but donors are like, wow, someone actually made this for me. Donors like to believe that human beings are. Sister Mary is a real person writing letters. We know Sister Mary is not necessarily a real person, but to your donor, she is. And so you have to. This stuff does make a big difference. So the whole sector just talks about all these little things that, again, by themselves, stamps on an angle. Why do we need to talk about first-class stamps and why putting them on an angle is truly revolutionary fundraising in 2022? It's mind-blowing, but here we are talking about these things. It does make a difference. And I know why it makes a difference, because it just suggests someone, wow, a computer would never put anything on an angle. So this must, someone put this together for me. And I lean into this idea, the more human something looks, humans are not perfect. So the more imperfect I can make things look in every way, shape, and form, then the more effective it's going to be. Always is. It's never stopped.
Yeah. Yeah, a human made this for me. Somebody made this for me. And the funny thing is that we are so obsessed with automations and we've looked at the commercial sector and we've tried to replicate a lot of that. And in the meantime, the commercial sector is starting to go, how can we be more human? How can we be more one-on-one? How can we have those messier relationships that are imperfect and unpredictable? Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, we're 10 years behind, still trying to catch up with what happened in the early 2000s.
Yeah. And I understand where it comes from and I understand why it's happening. Yeah. But automation usually just people in their brains still means I'm making more money because things are cheaper. That's a race I'm not interested in playing a part of. I'm not here to, even from a business point of view, I've never really been concerned about, that money part of making decisions based on money. But when you get into that game of, well, the faster this can be, the more automated this process can be, the more it will make. You're in bad shape, man. You're in bad shape.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's interested in an automated relationship. And so I don't know why we're so fixated on cheaper, faster, not even better.
Yeah. I'm sure you run into this all the time. The colleagues in our sector, very digital forward-thinking colleagues who I really appreciate, but often sort of talk about direct mail as being analog and then digital fundraising as being more technical. And anybody who's done direct mail knows that it's a lot more technical than digital fundraising. Like you said, the 1,000 little things that go into making everything work takes a lot more attention to detail, thought, care, love, as you point out all the time. It is a labor of love. It is a craft that you have to work at every day. And I appreciate that you're one of the guides along the way who are sort of lighting the way and showing us, pointing us in the right direction. So thanks for taking the time to come on. We ask every guest on the show if they've got just a piece of advice for people who are listening to this, a word of encouragement for all the people who are doing the hard work of building good in our world day in and day out.
That's a good one. I like that. That's a good thread. The piece of advice is that you lean into the fundamentals. There's nothing in this book that is my idea. This is just a catalog of ideas and things that have been around us for a long time. But I think from a sector point of view, we've just lost touch with just some of these key things that make a big difference in our work. And again, I come across as a little too direct and a little too harsh sometimes, and I really don't mean to be. I apologize for that. I mean, we have lots of friends and colleagues who are busting their balls every single day, and I'm so grateful for them for doing that work. And I'm just here to help them in whatever way I can, but also have a certain level of urgency. Again, this book George wrote 25 years ago, and people still aren't doing these key fundamental things that he was talking about were wrong back then. And we're just getting in the way of ourselves. So take the time to learn the fundamentals. Make sure your boss gets a chance to learn the fundamentals. Thanks for fighting the good fight every single day, because I know that you are. And this comes from a place of help. I really want us to get collectively better as quickly as possible. Again, apologize for my directness in my book and in my podcast, in this podcast, but that's my objective.
If people want to buy the book, or if they want to find you, know more about you, where can they go?
If you go to agentsofgood.org/creative, that will take you to the sign-up page, which will be morphing very soon to the page where you can either pre-buy it or buy it. We're still trying to figure out some of the kinks there, but it should be out. We're talking on April 25th, 2022. I'm hoping by sometime through May 2022, this book will be out in the wild and available for people to pick up, and I look forward to hearing what people think about it. But so far, I've sent to a lot of normal fundraisers, people doing the hard work every single day, and the feedback is exactly what I hope, which is finding it very useful. So that's amazing.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast and sharing with us. And this is your second time around, but hopefully we can have you back another time.
Appreciate it, Mike. I appreciate your time. Thank you.